Live streaming is on.
Hello, Global Theater. My name is Gerry Fialka. It's June 20, 2021. We want to thank Clinton Ignatoff for being here with us. Thank you, Clinton. We'll see you in a while. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Emily Pelstring. Is that right, Emily, how I pronounced it?
Yes.
Good. Real honor and a pleasure to be with you today. And so, what's the best thing for a human being?
Hell if I know. Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
God,
that's
constantly searching for that, huh?
good.
What does well-being mean? Yeah, anyways, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's a great way to start, because just because I ask a question doesn't mean, first of all, you have to answer. And if you don't know, saying I don't know, I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything. So I know you've been through this a little with me at the film farm when we shared time there in 2019. That was fun.
Yeah.
Fun time. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun.
So the next question is, what's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
My favorite way that information comes is when it comes through the body. When it comes as a physical knowing, that's my favorite kind of information, feeling information.
What a great way to word it. Physical knowing. Yeah, through the body. Great filmmaker Craig Baldwin, I said, what's your favorite form of information? He said, human touch. Now, most people don't think human touch is information. And then Ann Magnuson said, a hug. Hugging is her favorite form of information. So you got something in common with two of my favorite people I've interviewed. So that was nice. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
I mean, on a base level, to survive,
Yeah.
there probably is an instinct that tells us we have to. And I think, the kinds of information we collect might be misguided or wrong, or we're just collecting to collect at a certain point. But I think that the instinct to collect information probably is survival based.
Yeah.
You need to know where food is or where predators are or whatever. That's a kind of information gathering.
Yep. And you must have ESP, because my next question was, is this need or want to collect information more innate or more invented?
Oh, it's got to be both, right? I mean, yeah, there's probably an innate impetus to do it. And then, the way we do it just is totally dependent on, our lives, our situations, etc. So interesting questions so far. I'm glad they're not all just trick questions,
Well, no, everything is like tricky in a way, but it's not tricky to trick people. It's just to have fun. And at the beginning, some of my questions are either or, and it doesn't mean that the two options I'm giving are the only two options. There's more than that. So it's just a seed to jump off and talk about things. But my next question is why did humans invent language?
Yeah, it just I really don't have an answer for that. It's hard. I mean, I don't know the answer to that.
That's all right.
I feel like maybe we just weren't. I was gonna say we weren't getting enough information in other ways, but that's not. I don't think language actually helps that much. Maybe it gets in the way.
It gets in the way, guy.
Because we had to put something in the way.
That is great. We had to put something in the way.
Yeah.
Because Lily Tomlin, the reason I got that question was her and her partner Jane Wagner said, we invented language to complain.
That's good.
And what I like about that is that it enables me to ask you, what's the difference between complaining and critical thinking? You know, and especially in your role as a professor, but your role as an artist too, you know.
Yeah, I don't think critical thinking is always complaining. Critical thinking is like, it's a picking apart for sure. It's like an analysis. It's looking at how things might be working, but it's not always a complaint. There's often an element of complaining too. Often when we pick things apart, we find things to complain about. So maybe that's the relationship. Once you start critical thinking, you figure out what there is to complain about.
I'm glad you're laughing. That's what this whole thing is about, is having fun. And so it's, I heard that if you complain and you gossip, you live longer because you're like getting it out of your system. But, most people are like, don't complain and don't gossip, Do thoughts create emotions?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
That's simple yes or no, huh?
Yeah, that's fine. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create consciousness? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're just detecting it, or are we creating it?
Oh, that's too deep for me. I think you need a neuroscientist on that one.
That's good. And well, this one's sort of that too, but just these kind of questions, just your hunch, like what what's your impulse or intuition say? What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
Light. I think
Yeah.
so, at least in my case.
Yeah. You can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. That's what Audre Lorde said. And Yvonne Rainer responded, she says, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
A new tool of the master that can be used to dismantle the master's house, so to speak.
So to speak. And the curious thing is I really like when you put it in the context you want. I'm just saying, what new tool do you suggest? But you can put it in relationship to the quotes I read, because that's sort of implied, but it's not necessarily,
I mean, that's certainly food for thought, that question. Yeah, I don't know. That's like a really tough question. I would need to think about that one for a long time, I think.
Well, let's just ask, what's the newest tool in your creative process now? What's a new tool that you use? And you don't really, because the word new implies time, it doesn't have to be time, time based, or it doesn't have to be in relationship to time.
A tool that I've been using that I hope to always have available to me is, if it can be called a tool, is like strategies for collaboration, like ways of collaborating. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like a tool necessarily. It's like a thing that I find creatively useful, is to meet somebody else's mind halfway, and kind of triangulate in that way. So that's kind of like a creative tool. In relation to the quotes, I don't know. I mean, I think it's collaboration is essential to like dismantling oppressive systems. So, yeah. So I
No,
think it's useful in a lot of contexts.
yeah, I agree with you. I'm totally a collab person. I mean, it's like, I appreciate that. So what do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Um, there's like an kind of existential dread these days, about things kind of crumbling into like a kind of dark age. That we're crumbling into the dark ages.
Yeah. And you think that's in regard to COVID, or it was even pre-COVID?
No, that was pre-COVID. That's like, I don't know. I started existing during the Reagan era, so I think I've just seen like a steady crumbling, I guess, politically.
Well, here's,
socially.
yeah, I don't usually ask this, but it's sort of applicable. Do you think human progress is more cyclical or more cumulative? Are we just going in circles, or are we getting better and worse?
I think it's maybe a spiral.
Yeah.
So both a cycle and a direction. There's things are changing shape, you know. They do, certainly patterns repeat, you know, but there's also an element of chaos and dispersal in there too.
Yeah. You know, there's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, but that one you got right. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I don't think, yeah, it's like, you know, you're asking me how I think about it.
Yeah.
How I think about
it. Right. Well, that's the funny thing is, your observations of humans in general, I know it depends and it's a stupid question, but do you think humans are more feeling beings or more thinking beings?
I always love it when I meet one that's more of a feeler, or, you know, I think we're more thinking, you know, generally. Most people are more thinking. But when you meet somebody who I think like is in touch with feeling, it's so magical, and you can tell, you know, it's great. So I think that's kind of a goal. It's, for me, is to like feel more, be able to feel more, and like not be so lost in thought all the time. But that's very difficult. That's like advanced meditation stuff.
That is that is good, because one of my favorite quotes is Bridget Bardot's. She says, "I don't think when I make love." And I'm like, good luck. You know, you want to surrender to this total sensual feeling. Do you want to abandon all thought? I mean, it's, you know, yeah, I appreciate your answer, because most people say that humans are more feeling beings.
Oh.
Yeah. And here's
most of our days like going through thoughts. I mean,
yeah. No, I agree. I agree with you. You know, it's a debatable subject, but the funny thing is here's how they answered. I think we're more feeling beings. So Marshall McLuhan learned from the poet Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting the hidden psychic effects of the things we invent, so that we can learn how to cope with what we don't like about the inventions. So, you know, artists meaning filmmakers, writers, anyone creative. And what McLuhan's main percept is that even though we can turn to the artist to reveal these or expose them, these hidden psychic effects, we still ignore them. Why do we still ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though we can turn to the artist to reveal them to us?
Well, I think it's difficult to reckon with that stuff. It's just uncomfortable, you know, and it takes effort. And I'm not going to say that people are lazy, but I think, you know, it's another kind of coping mechanism to ignore things that are challenging, or that are like feel too true, or, you know, like we want to brush stuff under the carpet that's uncomfortable, you know, or that's too intense, or too baffling, or.
Yeah. So can you conjure up your earliest memory ever, or one of them?
No, I mean, my earliest memory is like a visual field. like that a thing that I decided was my earliest memory when I was a kid, trying to think if I had one, if I could remember being a baby, which I'm sure I can't, was like being in a yard and seeing a bunch of kids playing, and it was just like their silhouettes or their shadows kind of like running back and forth, these like kids backlit by the sun. It's just a visual.
Yeah, it sounds like a cool experimental film. So, is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Definitely a blessing.
Yeah.
I love memory.
Tell me a early role model or someone within your immediate family who had an impact on you, and what was that impact? So it's two parts. After within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family. You know, someone who had an impact on you, served as a role model, and what was that? You know, just briefly, what was that impact?
By immediate, do you mean nuclear or do you mean just
Yeah,
relative? Nuclear.
yeah.
So I mean, this is gonna say something about my upbringing, but I had a nanny growing up named Cardi, who was like 24 when she came to us, and I was 6 years old, and she lived with us. And she was from Kansas, and she drove a motorcycle, and she had really long hair, and she was constant joking. Like, she was a total comedian. Like, everything was comedy hour, and she really encouraged me to draw a lot. And she lived with us for like 4 years. And my parents both worked a lot. Like, they both came home after I was already in bed at night. So I grew really attached to this nanny, Cardi, who was a huge influence.
That is cool. That was well done. And so, it gave me the roots of sort of your encouraging to draw and be creative. So now outside your immediate family, and it doesn't have to be early, but just
Yeah.
whatever.
So, my early filmmaking hero was Maya Deren. And part of the reason for that is that I had been a really serious dancer when I was in high school. And I thought I wanted to be a dancer. I thought I wanted to like do that. There was a period of time where I was like, maybe I won't go to college. Maybe I'll just become a dancer. But I scrapped that idea and ended up going to art school. And I thought filmmaking would be this marriage of visual arts and dance, essentially, because it's sort of like, I saw it as potentially as choreography. Like, I was not like interested in movies at all. Like, I didn't like movies. Like, I wasn't a film buff. So I always saw it just as like a moving painting kind of. So Maya Deren was an early influence because she was actually very engaged with the idea of choreo cinema and of dance. And so when I was in undergrad, I started, reading her essays and like watched her entire filmography and like wrote a report. So that, I think that was like one of my earliest like artistic influences that I like identified with philosophically. And I felt like, oh, this is an understanding of a medium that changed my life. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that was so well put. And we're going to get back into filmmaking, but I got to tell you, one time I asked a younger woman, who were you influenced by to be an experimental filmmaker growing up? And she goes, not Maya Deren. And it was so funny.
If you want to know, like, you didn't say earliest, but if you had said earliest, yeah, I would say Pee Wee Herman.
Oh, wow. That is great too. Pee Wee. I love Pee Wee. Pee Wee is
Pee Wee is so deeply embedded in my psyche.
Oh, totally.
I watched that from like a very young age. And I really think that Pee Wee made me who I am.
That is
you know Jambi died? The actor who played Jambi died a couple days ago.
I didn't. Oh.
Anyway, I follow Paul Rubens on Instagram. I'm obsessed with him.
Oh, he's a hero. I mean, my wife and I put on him doing Sly Stone the other day because you know, Hot Fun in the Summertime is got to be one of the greatest summer songs ever. And just for him to go, "Hurrah!" You know, just the way he does that, it must make Sly feel good. You know, Sly is homeless and he lives in a van in LA. And you know, we always want to go up to him and say, you know, we worship your music. Your music is our lifeblood, you know.
Well, I mean, he had like really cool friends. Like if you see his Christmas special from 1988, where he's like the coolest lineup ever.
The Del Rubio triplets. I mean, we could talk about Pee-wee for the rest of the time. So that was a good divert. I'm glad I brought that up. Okay, now back to your upbringing. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
Catholic, and it sucked.
Wow. Did you check out?
I was never checked in. I was just forced to go. I never believed in God. I cannot remember ever a moment where I believed in God, and I had to go to church anyway. I was always a skeptic from the time I was conscious. And the disciplinary situation was emotionally abusive, and I really have something against the Catholic Church. I consider to them, I have said it before, and I stand by it, a criminal organization. And I am pissed off at having been forced to be. I was like a smart student, but I was poorly behaved. Like after like 7th grade, I just like, you know, I was the brat in religion class that was like always trying to annoy the teacher with, you know, questions and.
No, that was good.
Make a joke out of all of the sacraments and stuff.
But I have to follow up. Do you pray?
Well, I now I meditate, and so I don't believe, I'm like non-theistic kind of spirituality, but I do have a spirituality, and it aligns kind of closely with a lot of neo-pagan beliefs, but I don't like worship gods and goddesses, although I appreciate the symbolism. And the kind of like ethics of mutuality and reciprocity and respect for the natural world, and kind of just trying to be like a good, you know, steward for other living things. So yeah, I mean, I have a strong sense of spirituality that is, like I said, non-theistic.
Well put. Thanks for being so dang articulate. I appreciate this. And so if God does exist, what would you want God to say to you after you die?
I'm sorry.
Would you forgive him? That's great. Now, would you forgive him? Oh, no, I shouldn't say him.
I'm not ready to forgive you. No, I don't.
Yeah, I try not to say a him or a she or a he, but yeah, would you forgive God? Yeah, I like. Let me sit on that for a while.
I'll think about
it. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
Yeah, it's not. I don't think evil is like a separate force or something like that. I think people get damaged and they get destructive, you know. That's just that humans do that, you know, and it's from wounds. You know, people are wounded and so they wound, or they are wounded and so they become numb, and then they are able to destroy others. So I don't know that, I don't think there's like an evil force or like a demon or something lurking around, seeping into people's bodies and possessing them. I don't think that's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
How do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And this one I'm going to set up with a few modern thinkers' thoughts. Alan Watts said, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurai. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So the basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you react to the first one, Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I don't know what that means. Like that doesn't ring true for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't really relate to that one. The others I think are just about having being attuned to your boundaries. You know, that's what that is like knowing, you know, if somebody is a danger to you, or to other people or whatever, you know, just being alert to that, not forgetting. So that actually makes sense to me.
Yeah. So you're saying like alertness is how to deal with an enemy.
Yeah, and I think I'm taking a cue from animals when I say that.
Yeah.
You know, how like when animals feel threatened, they become more alert. So people too become more alert. You know, what is an enemy? It's like a threat, right? I don't know.
No, that's a good word. Threat is interesting. So James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin about 100 years ago. You know, cinema is not that old. It's only like about 138 years old. He basically checked out. He said, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? And then years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Emily, why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Yeah, I think, well, for me, I really like stuff that I really like work that acknowledges the role of artifice, the role that artifice plays in the representation. So for me, I'm always kind of like looking for that and enjoying that part of a recreation. But yeah, I mean, you know, you can talk about one thing by talking about another. Like that's what I think is so magic about fiction and these kinds of recreations is that you know, they capitalize on our capacity for metaphor, which is like what creativity is, you know. Yeah, I don't know.
No,
That was
yeah, that was good. Yeah, metaphor is the huge thing. You know, McLuhan had such great fun with that word. Robert Browning said, the poet said, our reach should exceed our grasp, or what is heaven for? And McLuhan was all about, which he taught me mainly, was just reword aphorisms. Yeah, they're cute and you can get an epiphany from them, but it's like take it farther. He said, our reach should exceed our grasp, or what is a metaphor? So, you told us a little what first sort of attracted you to pursuing drawing. You know, your nanny was sort of encouraging you, but sort of walk us through, you know, how you got to the point where you combined, you know, I mean, you're sort of like, don't you call yourself multidisciplinary? And I mean, you're artist, filmmaker, dancer, and musician. Would you, I mean, how would you, you know, walk us through the four main genres or pursuits you have, and where did you go? Like you already said, sort of with film, you go, oh, I see Maya Deren, I can do that. You know, she sort of like opened the door. So, you know, flush that out a little more, like who else, you know, enabled you to say, I can do that as my career, you know?
Yeah, well, it was actually animation that I wanted to do first because I was like drawings because I was a drawer and I was like, yeah, drawings that can move, like drawing and movement, that's perfect. That's animation, done. But then I like, you know, got into this like daring stuff and then I got into experimental film and live action stuff when I went to art school. Um, but yeah, I mean, and the dance had always been there. I think having separate tracks um, has been like a blessing and a curse. You know, having separate artistic interests because you know the fields, especially like the professional fields and like the communities don't always entirely overlap. So I feel kind of peripheral everywhere. Um, which is both I like being able to have my finger in different pies, but not feeling like fully embedded in something can be feel a little untethered sometimes. Um, but I guess you were looking for like how each one came to be. I mean, drawing is the most basic and most easy, and it's something that I'm returning to. Like I spent all day drawing. It's something I'm always returning to. Um, yeah, because it's so direct. But also dancing is so direct. So is music. They're all very direct in different ways. I'm not answering this question very well.
No, you're doing fine. You're doing fine. And it's sort of like, who who did you see dance? I mean, if it all goes back to Pee Wee, that's fine. I mean, who did you see dancing that you went, oh, I can do that? And then who did you see or hear music wise saying, I can do that?
Ah, okay, that's different. You know, dancing, yeah, so it does all go back to Pee Wee. But
Yeah.
with dancing, it's like on the playground. Like I grew up in Miami, and I just remember like learning dance moves on the playground. Like the junior high girls would teach like the younger grade school girls these like dance moves, and the soundtrack to my childhood was like Miami bass music. So like that's the type of dancing I learned first, and then you know I studied classical ballet later, which is the opposite. But I've always loved to move in different ways. I think all kids move. It's just like some people stop moving at a certain point. But when you meet a baby, like babies naturally dance. So it's just like an instinct that you can cultivate or ignore. And I chose to cultivate it. And dancing was attractive to me because it's a way of responding to music and being creative alongside music. So, you know, naturally, when I started learning filmmaking, I took like a class called like sound for the screen and like sonic arts and stuff like that, and learned Pro Tools. And because there was this digital environment, I was like, ooh, I can compose sonically without actually having to play any instruments. This is great. So that opened up the music door for me. I also learned to play drums later, you know, poorly, in like a surf rock band. um, but yeah, that was like being able to compose electronically is what opened up music. Um, and you know, dance and music, like I said, are so intertwined. And the reason I got into filmmaking is because of dance. So the things have always been interrelated, and I've like, you know, I make sound for my films. I make sound with my collaborators. I make video with my collaborators. I perform with them. We have choreographed sections. I also like choreograph and direct music videos because I know other musicians from having done music. So everything kind of starts to integrate at a certain point. You know, I said like I feel like not fully embedded in anything, but the beauty of that is that I'm able to like cross bridges between a lot of things in different ways.
Yeah. No, I love it. You've explained it well. And I just saw the Twyla Tharp documentary called Twyla Moves, and you got to see it just for it's a really good film because, you know, it's her choreographing on Zoom, but there's so much footage of her. She is the history of video art. She was there from the beginning with everybody. So the clips were just amazing. But the key thing I got, the first 5 years of her dancing, she specifically said no music. And then she became, David Byrne, everybody, the music and her were like this. And she probably knew, I want to learn dance first. So no music for 5 years. I thought that was like amazing. But tell me, Emily, because I know we talked music, like just 3 genres or bands. You mentioned surf music, but 3 composers or music people that really had an impact on your sensibility for music. Is there just a couple,
Well, that is so hard, because I listen to music constantly all the time, and it's like so much of it is coming and going through my life, and so it's almost impossible to choose. But I think one thing that blew my mind at a crucial stage was like British psychedelic folk from like the 60s, like Incredible String Band and Pentangle, stuff like that. So that kind of era genre blew my mind. And then another British kind of, I guess, dating back to the 70s is probably like Throbbing Gristle and all the projects that Genesis P. Orridge was involved in, and like Psychic TV, and even stuff that their collaborators did, like Coil, Chris and Cozy, all of those spin-off projects too. But then I also I love pop music as well. So like I like Kate Bush is like my favorite pop music.
That's good.
And then for contemporary stuff, I mean, well,
you covered it. You covered it well, because I know one thing when we first met that really I loved. You said you liked the Residents, or you even knew who the Residents were.
Yeah, I love the Residents. So my bandmate introduced the first band I was in, like when I was like 25, my bandmate introduced me to the Residents, and I was like, yeah.
Because their early films in the Ann Arbor Film Festival, those films and Debo's films we were like, what? And this was pre-MTV, and this was really an eye opener for us. So a screenwriting teacher told me a great film or great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Stanley Kubrick says the opposite. Great film is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process?
Ultimately, probably an irrelevant one, or at least some people would say. Because people will get what they get out of something, regardless of your intention. And I have a colleague who says artists often don't know what they're doing, which I think is kind of true. I sort of like, often I'll make something and then I'll pretend I had an intention afterwards just to seem like I know what I'm doing, but I really didn't.
That is a great line. I want to use both of those lines. I'll pretend like I know what I'm doing. So Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of the audience when you're creating your piece?
Depends what the piece is. I think with performance, I think about the audience a lot. I'm like, what is this? How can I surprise the audience? Like, performance for me is very audience oriented, because they're going to be right there. So I'm like imagining them. I'm like almost seeing it through their eyes while I'm making stuff, or trying to do that, trying to put myself in the audience's shoes. But with other forms, like, and I guess filmmaking, single channel filmmaking is a bit like that too, because it's theatrical. So you're imagining, like you'll tweak and you'll work and you'll get in there. And then you always have to take this step back and be like, pretend I haven't seen this before. Okay. So in that moment, you're being the audience. Is that answering your question?
Yeah, really good. Because tell me, just before I tell you this thing about Jack Smith, tell me like just a couple performance artists who have like impressed you or made an impact on you. You're like, oh, you know, that I like.
Well, Grace Jones.
Great,
Jones
nice.
shirt on. I don't know if you can see her Band-Aid.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so Grace Jones is brilliant. You know, I've never seen her live, but all the filmed clips and filmed concerts and filmed performances, because she's a cabaret artist essentially.
Yeah.
So I think I'm really drawn to that form. I'm really drawn to cabaret and drag as performing art forms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's perfect because do you know this about, you know, the two people they sort of said invented performance art, not the history of performance by solo acts has been around forever. But when they started applying the label, just like punk rock, well, you could debate who invented punk rock, but when did, you know, Lester Bang called this band punk rock? So they say is Jack Smith and Alan Caprow. They sort of like invented, and I like that because Jack Smith used to tell people, he'd go, hi, Emily, come over to my apartment. I'm going to film you. So he would do you up for like 3 hours and then he'd film you for 3 minutes. I was like, that's all, you know, and then he would take all the footage and say, okay, there's a screening tonight at my loft at 9 p.m. And then he wouldn't start the film until like 2 in the morning. So everybody's laying around like, when's this going to start? And then he would just start loading film in the projector. No editing, like live at the live edit. So it just happened once. It wasn't like a single channel, you know, film piece that was edited, you know. So I always appreciate. Have you seen the Jack Smith documentaries? You know.
No, I've seen Flaming Creatures.
Yeah.
Film, and I've read an interview about the context in which it was made, and
yeah, check out Mary Jordan's doc on Jack. I think you'd appreciate it because he would it, and you know there'd be no David Lynch or no John Waters without Jack Smith, and no Andy Warhol. All three of those biggies sort of admit, but whatever. So if let's just go with the pencil because you're a drawer. McLuhan would say everything we invent extends some humanness. So like knife and fork, we extend our teeth. And, you know, like the shutter in a camera projector, we extend our eyelid. So what does the pencil extend for you? What humanness?
That's hard to say whether it's like the eyes or the hand. Wait.
Yeah, that's
seeing or touch. It's a kind of both.
Yeah. You're saying it extends both of those. Yeah. And then what does cinema extend for you? What does a film camera extend for you? Whether it's video or you know, actual film.
What does it extend?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a like more complicated almost, like as a sense, because if you include sound in that experience, then it would be the same thing as drawing, like in that involves the eye, but also the ears. So it'd be eyes and ears. We'd be doing the kind of, if drawing is eyes and hands, then cinema would be eyes and ears or something. I don't know.
Yeah. It's funny because McLuhan said the movie extends the foot because you travel, you know, and it's funny because
like in a practical way.
Yeah. It's there's no answer, and it's what he talked about is called sense ratio shifting. So when we invent spoken word, we're using our ears more. So the ear becomes dominant. When we invent printed word, the eye becomes dominant. It's more, and then so it's like what human activity is where all 5 senses are pretty much equally engaged.
Oh, are you asking me?
Yeah, yeah. It's part of the sense ratio shifting. So as we invent things, we shift our sense ratio.
Uh-huh. And there's
So,
one thing that shifts all of our sense ratios?
no, not shifts. Where I'm just asking off the cuff, what human activity that when you would say where all 5 senses are sort of equally engaged.
Maybe tripping on mushrooms?
That's a good answer.
I don't know.
No, look at this again. I like laughing. I'm glad you're not taking all this too serious. And I like when you say maybe. It's like that's what, back to Lily Tomlin. He said, reality's just a collective hunch, you know. So Peter Greenaway said cinema is much too rich a medium to be left to storytellers. Are experimental filmmakers telling stories a different way or doing something completely different? I know it's both and it depends again, but it's sort of like, Tony Conrad's The Flicker. It's just black and white flickering on and off.
Mhm.
He didn't, you can't really say, oh, he intended that to be storytelling. Now we could watch it and have a story go through our head. But I'm just saying, it's an interesting thing because I think you do know that we're working with a moving image medium here, people. And then most films in the 138 years has been movies of plays. It's just storytelling. And
Mhm.
there's some filmmakers who get out of that. So do you think the filmmakers who are doing abstract non-narrative are telling a story a different way or doing something different?
Um, I always see this kind of fuzzy line. I don't draw a hard line between the play and the formal intervention, the abstract
Yeah.
form. I think they're always kind of both happening to some extent. Obviously, there's like a spectrum, and one can be at one end or the other. But I think my favorite thing is when you're watching a film that's more on the play end of the spectrum, and suddenly there is this formal intervention that's like, what? And it just breaks it just enough to remind you that you're in a trance. And I find that to be the happy place. That to me is like the most magical um, viewing experience personally.
Yeah.
You know.
No, that was good. And I've attended the Ann Arbor Film Festival for about half its existence. It's going to be its 60th year next year. 60 years. That's like half of the history of cinema. It's pretty amazing. And George Manupelli and me and you are sitting around. Let's imagine 60 years ago starting it. Now, the question is, should we be more inclusive or exclusive? And I'm going to set it up because I asked Chick Strand, who was doing the same thing with Canyon Cinema, with Bruce Bailey. And she said, we were trying to recreate our 11-cent movie-going experience. We would show a newsreel, a cartoon, a feature, and then an experimental film. And then Stan Brakhage came along and says, no, don't do that. Just show experimental film. They already got a venue for the other stuff. So, Ann Arbor does show animation, documentaries, but would you want us to be more inclusive or more exclusive?
I would say Stan was wrong, and that I prefer a curatorial approach that is more of a mixed bag. I like the variety show. I like not knowing what's coming next. I like being surprised. I like bouncing around, and I like having to and I like it when a curator does that. And yet manages to make connections between things that seem like they don't belong together at first glance. That I think is advanced. That's advanced thinking. That's advanced curating.
Believe me, I am so on the same page with you.
Yeah.
So what are the services and disservices of ghettoizing experimental film? Jackson Pollock was on the cover of Life magazine in 1949. Regular folks could start developing an aesthetic of experimental painting. There's no Bruce Conner or Maya Deren on the cover of Life magazines. Generally, it's privileged people who develop an avant-garde aesthetic and dominate experimental film world. Any comment?
I mean, I think that was definitely probably true for a long time, but my hope is that it becomes less and less true, and that it's becoming less and less true. And it also depends on what you consider to be experimental. And that's why I think the kind of narrowing of that definition, this fits squarely into the category of experimental, is going to keep it that way. Do you know what I mean? It's going to keep it very insular. I think it's better to be able to look at like any form of media and see that it is people can be experimental on TikTok. That is my belief. So, I would love it if that was included in these avant-garde film festivals. Like that's what I think it should be. And that's not like, you don't have to be privileged to be on TikTok or educated or anything. And you can definitely experiment with the form and do interesting things. So yeah, I think we're at a place in the media, our mediascape is at a place now where it's no longer true that you have to be rich to have a camera and film, So.
Yeah, Jean Cocteau actually said it. Our film will become an art form when its materials are as cheap as paper and pencil.
And they're not, but there are probably some households where there are like 4 cameras and no papers or no paper pencils,
Yeah, but you can make a feature film on a cell phone, and you couldn't, in the old days you really
hard to edit, but yeah.
And so that was funny because what you said last year, last 2 years I've watched the Ann Arbor Film Festival online, which is a real different experience. And
did you see my friend Jessica's performance? It was called Hecate's Palladio. It was Jessica.
I loved it. I was in it. I made a mistake in it too. You weren't supposed to say either you were supposed to type and not talk, or talk and not type. And I didn't read the instructions well, and they sort of called me out, and I was like, "Oops, sorry." But no, I loved it. That was one of the highlights for me.
Yeah. So that's my bandmate. And my main collaborator, Jessica.
Oh, well, you definitely have to hook me up because I want to interview her, because I don't know. I really wanted to compliment her.
Yeah.
And the other thing that really got me was, I asked George Clinton of Parliament Funkadelic, what kind of music do you like? And he says, I like the kind of music that really pisses me off, so I can figure out why it's pissing me off, like it's affecting me. And there was one film which looked like, it was totally an IKEA TV commercial. I mean, like super slick and selling just totally consumer stuff. And at the end it said, like, thanks to IKEA or financed by IKEA or something. And it drove me nuts, but it was so good at driving me nuts. I figured that was one of the best films of the festival for me, because it was so pushed to the extreme. I hate when like HBO enters a doc in Ann Arbor. It's like, that's not what we're about. But that again is being what you said earlier, that's being exclusive. Oh, we're not about that. I have a horrible bias. I hate when experimental films have drone shots. I don't hate it, but it's hard because a drone shot to me for most cinema meant you had a big budget because it was a crane shot.
Yeah.
And you know, now you can do it cheap. So I can't erase that bias. It's harder for me to erase the bias, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I can go on Venice Boardwalk.
You can have your aesthetic like preferences, you know.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Well, it's fine to a point, but it also limits, because I can buy a guy on Venice Boardwalk tried to sell me a drone camera for $50 once. I says, "Can I get this online cheaper?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, "That's amazing. You know, for $40 I can get drone shots, you know."
Yeah.
So I spoke with Michael Apted, the filmmaker, 40 years ago when MTV was first breaking. And I said, "Why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast?"
Mm-hmm.
He said, and this is Marty Scorsese, he said, I'm editing my films faster because of MTV.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael said, because we have learned to take in information faster. So my question is asked with a bias. Can humans really learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
No, let me explain music videos in that way. So Carol Vernalis, music video writer, talks about this phenomenon and interviews a bunch of directors. And I think it was Stephen Barron that said that the strategy with those early rock videos was to include more, to think of composition in terms of thought beats, meaning to think of it like, every, like a new idea is like a new thought beat. And so music videos would cram a lot of these into a 3-minute song or whatever. And, I think it was like Barron or like Stephen R. Johnson. It was some big director, some big early music video director said that he tried to cram in more thought beats than a viewer could possibly get on first viewing. And that makes sense because the concept of MTV when it first started was that it was video radio. And they took the model of heavy rotation and narrowcasting, which means that you hear a song over and over and over again. It's on heavy rotation, it replays a lot. So directors had to have strategies that would hold up to repeat viewing, and including more information that you could possibly take in on first viewing is a great strategy for giving something replay value, right? So it actually has more to do with like the way music videos were disseminated after the radio model. Anyways.
That was good. I loved it. You go, let me explain. I'm going to use that in my lectures now, Emily. Thank you. That's
I taught a course on the music video. On music video.
That is good. What is the spelling of Carol's last name?
What's that?
What's the spelling of Carol's last
name? Vernalis. Vernalallis. And she's got books, Experiencing Music Video, and I forget the title of the other one, but 2 big books on music video. Yeah.
No, super. And it also was a real coup when you could see Bruce Conner to Devo on MTV. It was like I knew experimental filmmakers who were finally getting paid.
Well, it was this interesting thing because they had the concept for MTV and they put it on the air in 1981. And there were only like 250 music videos in existence, and they were going to play music videos 24/7. They did not have enough material. If you made a music video, they had to play it. That's how British new wave music reached America. Even though those were like weirdo art school kids, like coinciding with the punk scene, which is not mainstream music at all. And their videos were fucking weird. They had to play them on MTV. They didn't have any material. So then you got like American kids in the suburbs, because that was where MTV was. It was just in the suburbs. It wasn't in urban centers because it was hard to get the infrastructure for cable wasn't in urban centers when it first started. So it was all these suburban kids like seeing like Boy George and stuff, and like just getting exposed to, like the edgiest, British urban subcultures. And that probably made the station way more popular because it's like novelty, suburban kids like, what? You were an eyeliner?
No, we could talk about that for hours. That was really well done. I'm glad you said that. And so Ken is it literally possible for the hidden question really was there, is it literally possible to multitask?
Oh no, that's another thing Vernalis talks about, is that, it's kind of like music videos. And you could say this about experimental films that are very dense in that way too. You're dealing with kind of like multiple streams of information. We're talking about information earlier, right? So you have like a lyrical stream that's language. You have a musical stream. And then you also have like the visual stream, visual information. So that's like 3 types of information. And you're probably not ingesting them all at once. You're probably floating between them. One is being more foregrounded in one moment, and another is being more foregrounded. And sometimes there's these beautiful moments of congruence. But otherwise, what that does is makes for like a very dynamic experience where it's like always new, like everything always feels new. That's why I like the form so much.
Yeah. What were the 3 again? Musical, visual, and
language, like lyrical.
Right, and lyrical. So what's more fundamental, music or language?
I don't think one takes one is, I mean, it depends, like in a particular situation or in my mind personally, or
Yeah, in your mind personally.
what is more prominent?
Well, you put the context of fundamental. I just ask it fundamental. So if you want to change it to prominent, that's fine too. It's like, yeah.
And you're talking specifically about like when watching a music video, or?
No, just in general. I wanted to switch to music for a few minutes or a few seconds because when
listening to a song, am I paying more attention to the lyrics or the music?
No, it's well, that's a really good. But here's what you're doing. You're answering a question with a question. Emily, you win. That's what the series is all about. Let's Yeah, no, I know there's no clarification. It's all confusing. That's why I'm asking stupid questions, because I don't know anything. No, it's just a question I picked up from this Smithsonian Institute magazine. This woman was asked, what's more fundamental, music or language?
I think music.
Yeah. No, I agree. So then my friend, the 3 T's. Yeah, the 3 T's of music: technique, theory, and taste. So you can learn the theory, you can learn technique. How does one acquire taste in music?
I think the only one of those 3 that's important is taste, and you don't actually need the other 2.
Right, but how do you acquire taste? How do you?
By listening to a lot of music.
Yeah.
That's all. By liking actual music and listening to it.
Yeah. Well, there's one more music question, and it's I would like to ask you, this is a McLuhan line, actually. He goes, song is slowed down speech. The reason cultures have different musical taste is that it's ultimately connected to language difference.
It could be connected to like sonic environments too. I have a friend who's who's doing his PhD, and like one of the many areas he's looking at is how music from certain locations reflects the soundscape of those locations in some way, so language is part of a soundscape too, obviously. But more to it. There's more to the sonic environment than language. The sounds of like particular birds or water or whatever.
Yeah.
Or there's city sounds, and that impacts what you reflect in music as well, like electronic sounds, industrial noises. Once the industrial revolution happened, that changed music, that changed sound.
You know who was at Ann Arbor this year was, you must know him, Negative Land. And I interviewed one of them, and I'm going to ask you this question before I give you this No, I'll just tell you now because it fits in. So the question is basically, does the technology or culture that's dominant, is that more, if prominent than self-expression? Like, what is art making? Are you just a vehicle for whatever culture or technology is dominant, or are you actually self-expressing? So, because like George Manupelli said, there's no self-expression. That's what Jonas Mekas said. No, George said, ignore yourself. And Jonas Mekas said, there is no self-expression. But Cecil Taylor says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. So what's your hunch again? Is it more I know it's both, but is it more self-expression or more the culture or technology that's dominant, that's coming through you to express?
I think I'm personally interested in the culture and technology and the role of culture and technology in what I do, and I try to intentionally make it visible.
Yeah.
And sometimes the work that I do is like about the culture and technology.
Yeah.
So for sure, I think that for me is very prominent. But there's other moments, of course, where I'm doing something that is like very intuitive. Like imagery is like coming to me intuitively and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well,
I mean, it depends on the case, but I think the culture technology is a really interesting thing to allow to be the primary the work. Yeah.
Because the next question is can art making be egoless?
Oh, I don't feel like I have a good enough understanding of the way the ego fully works.
Yeah.
I'm not that good with psychoanalysis, to be honest. And I feel like the ego is like a complicated concept that I don't have like a full handle on. I wish I did. I mean, it's been explained to me and I've read about it, but I'm like, I still get confused.
Yeah. That's fine. No, I like to ask people, was Freud right? Because so many people think, and they go, about what? Most people think Freud was right, just like Einstein's right, Freud's right. You just go along with it. But back to the other question is, I'm intrigued because the drummer from James Brown said he lived in Ohio and next to him was a factory on one side and a train track on the other. And that's how he invented funk drumming, because he heard this. Pss, 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 pss. And then Ginger Baker's same thing. He's in London and the bombs are they're bombing London. So how did he play drums? Boom, 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 like a bomb's going off. So the guy John from Negativland, he says Miss Elliott learned how to sing from car alarms. Like that was the environment she was in. So can you name an instrumental music piece that makes you laugh or has made you laugh?
Purely instrumental.
Yeah, that's a hard one because I usually say you can't say Spike Jones because the majority of Spike Jones is.
Well, there's one song that makes me lol every time, and it only has one line that repeats, but
that's okay. What is it?
It is the language that's funny. Let me just.
What song is it though, or what artist?
Okay, so it's Robert Wyatt.
Oh yeah.
And the song is called "Pigs in There."
Oh, good. I'll look at that.
I listen to it. I like cannot help laughing out loud.
That is good, but it is fun because we think of laughter as being language based.
Yeah. Well, in this case, it might be the language that's making me laugh, but it's also like the groove that makes me laugh too. It's musically funny. It's musically funny.
Yeah. So, Emily, what do you think the motive of the cave artist was? Not what Herzog did in his film or Anthropologist, just your hunch.
What did the cave what?
What was the motive of the cave artist?
The cave artist. The
Yeah.
motive. The motive.
Yeah.
Huh. Impossible to know, but it's fun to imagine. Maybe it was about, maybe they're trying to explain what happened, you know?
Yeah.
Or that's what it seems like. It's like there were animals over here, and then I came in with my bow, and then it was like there was this other animal, and they're like, I don't understand. I can't picture this. Well, let me draw it for you.
It's good. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
Compromise.
Nice. Again, there's no right or wrong answers. That one you got right. I'm impressed.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends on the situation. Probably situations you want to maintain your conviction.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Now, you've accomplished a lot in your life. Rate these 3 elements in your accomplishments: luck, skill, and ambition. What played the biggest role, second and third?
I guess it has to be ambition. I guess. I don't know. Like it's hard to say. Or like the biggest role in actually getting things done has to be ambition.
Yeah,
Like,
that's good.
deadline. Like I have to get this done. This is my ambition is to finish this season.
Yeah.
Like no one cares if I do it. You know, it has to come from me. No one's waiting for me to like, you know, make an album or make a film or something. It's like my own ambition is the only thing that is making things happen at all.
Then what would you put second and third?
What are the others? Like luck and skill? Probably skill. I know I'm lucky, like I know I'm privileged. You know, so like I don't want to deny that that my whole life is like a result of being born lucky in a way. But yeah, I'm not, you know, also like sometimes I feel unlucky, you know, too, so I don't know.
No, that was good. So T.S. Eliot said that poetry is outing your inner dialogue. What language is your inner dialogue in?
English.
In what form is your inner consciousness in?
It's just like a black cloud.
Oh, nice. A black cloud. That is perception reality.
Ooh. Sort of.
Great answer. Love it. Lewis Carroll said, I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. Have you believed in any impossible things lately?
I don't think so. I don't think I know that they're impossible yet, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've been creating for years. Tell me one major element that stayed the same in your creations and one major element that's changed.
One element that stayed the same is a kind of playfulness.
Yeah.
That I can't get rid of. Like I just can't, it's something I actually can't control. The like playfulness or like some people identify it as like childlike or cute. That is something that, you know, even if I scrubbed hard, wouldn't go away, just couldn't destroy it. So I think I have like a very strong like inner child, or that there's something essentially childlike or ish in me that won't go away. So there's that. And then the thing that's changed is yeah, I think I've kind of things have gotten, I think, what's changed? So much. Well, I think I've just gotten more comfortable being all over the place, you know?
Nice.
I've kind of just embraced, there's certain things I've just embraced, and I've embraced a kind of working across between mediums, ideas, reworking ideas, repeating ideas. I think I'm more comfortable hashing something out over multiple projects and in multiple iterations and in multiple forms. I think I might have stopped myself from doing that at a certain point, but now I'm like, no, this is legitimate. I'm going to keep working with this one idea and I'm going to push it in like 7 different ways, and that's okay. So there's like some comfort there that wasn't there before.
Nice. So fill in the blank. Anger can be a productive emotion when
there's injustice.
Yeah. What's the most significant difference between women and men, physical aside?
Well, you'd have to put physical aside because I kind of don't believe in it's like a bioessentialist vision of gender. Um, and yeah, and I also don't, I think like obviously genders these divisions are totally socially constructed, and it's very kind of problematic to categorize women and men based on traits. I think that's like caused a lot of problems in the world, and there's a lot of doesn't reflect my reality as like a cis woman. Like I don't identify with many of the traits that are ascribed to women, so I kind of like don't like that question,
No,
like,
that's good. That is about 10 to 20% of people ask that. They go, nothing. They go, there is no difference. And I appreciate that, because you can imagine what I hear 80% of the time is women are emotional, men are linear, and
I don't
so
think it's true at all.
yeah. But that's good. See, you allow me to hear you say, I don't like that question. That helps me, because it's like, I'm always out to how to better ask, because this next question, it's still, I'm struggling with it, but what caused matriarchy?
What caused matriarchy?
Yeah.
We've never really experienced matriarchy. Like we live in patriarchy. Where's the matriarchy? Sign me
No,
up.
but it was supposedly at the beginning, women were, huh?
At the beginning of time?
Yeah, no, well, the beginning, let's say, of, humans being conscious on Earth, that there was matriarchy, women were running the world. Let's just say, not running, but then, because it's like, the other question is what caused patriarchy? So I mean, it's like, I know it's just a jumping off point. Yeah.
One theory is that capitalism caused patriarchy.
Yeah.
That's one strong theory.
Yeah.
And that is, if you haven't read, have you read Caliban and the Witch by Silvia Federici? That is,
yeah,
Marxist feminist, very good outlining of how capitalism caused patriarchy.
Yeah.
There was already patriarchy, obviously, before capitalism in like feudal Europe, and we're looking specifically at like a European tradition here. But globalization and colonization are from a European tradition, so that's also patriarchy and capitalism. So
because the other issue that I'm struggling with, or just trying to learn more, is Laura Mulvey, and then Nina Menkins has talked about it, the female gaze. So, they just have a documentary on this woman, Alice, I forgot her last name, but she helped invent cinema, and no one knows that she helped invent cinema like 130 years ago. And so was she making films with the female gaze, But I say, well, no, because she was dominated by male painters and male photographers showing her visuals, or was she going, I haven't seen all that, I'm just going to make films with my own vision, like the human gaze, that I'm trying to learn the whole thing about female gaze. I don't know if you've studied it or
yeah. I mean, another interesting theory is Hélène Cixous's écriture féminine, which is like, I guess, women's writing, feminine writing, something like that, where this is like in the 70s, she like calls women to write from the body, which I guess is analogous to the female gaze, maybe. But I think that could extend, regardless of gender, the idea of writing from one's particular body, one's particular self. I think that is like an interesting call, an interesting challenge to try to do. You talk about being influenced, obviously, by things you've seen, but also asking questions about authentic expression and what that is. So these are all like, very, very complicated things to grapple with. I think there's no easy answer.
Yep. But no, I appreciate your feedback. How do you find peace of mind?
By trying to feel and not think, to come full circle. That is how, because the mind is very talkative, I guess. There's a lot of language in it. And I find it very helpful to see what else there is other than that running dialogue.
Yeah. That's good. I asked Abigail Child, what language is your inner dialogue in? And she said, I wish I knew, which I think is one of the best answers, because it's okay to wonder and think about things, but it's also just this like feeling thing. How much can you erase? We can't erase, you can't separate feeling from thinking, but we can, because we have the words. But it's so interconnected. It's like, I'm not going to think about thinking.
It's really hard to do.
Yeah. So Emily, if you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
Aww. I would say it's not your fault. Don't blame yourself. Don't blame yourself.
Nice.
Yeah.
Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're usually taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness that you've turned into a strength.
Indecisiveness is a weakness.
Yeah.
But sometimes it also leads to more considered decision making. So
yeah,
it can be turned into a strength.
Well put. So just a few more minutes. Can you do a couple more minutes?
Sure.
Yeah. These are 5 short Alan Watts questions, just off the top of your head, in like a couple words. Who started it all?
Pee-wee.
Nice. I agree. Are we going to make it?
Nope.
Where do we put it?
Under the sink.
Who's cleaning it up?
The dog.
Is it serious?
No.
Wow, that was good. So, should toilet paper come over the roll or under?
Over, absolutely.
All right. If a publisher was to release your autobiography, off the top of your head, what would the title be?
Alone in the Dark.
They want to scent the glue in the binding. What smell would it be?
Wait, sorry, they want to scent what?
They want to scent glue in the binding of your autobiography. What smell would it be?
Rain.
Oh my God. People don't usually think of rain as a smell. That is a great smell. I love it.
Actually, O3 is actually what you're smelling. You're smelling ozone when you smell rain.
Ozone. You're smelling ozone. Yeah. Yeah. One of my favorite songs of all time is I'm Lost in the Ozone Again. If a statue was built in your honor, where would you want it displayed and what would it be made of?
I would want it displayed maybe I would want it displayed underwater on a beach so that you could only see it at low tide. And what would it be made of?
Yeah.
And it would be made of soap.
Nice. Tell me,
like a environmentally safe soap.
yeah. Tell me something good you never had and you never want. So it's good, you never had it, but you never wanted it.
Like objectively good.
Yeah, just you put it in the context you want, whatever you define as good.
God, I feel like I have everything. I can't. Oh, well, I feel like I don't know. There's nothing that comes to mind, unfortunately.
That's all right.
Yeah.
So Joseph Boys said, make the secrets productive. And Lou Welsh, beat poet, said, guard the secrets, constantly reveal them. It was 1928, Thornton Wilder said, art is confession. Art is the secret told, but art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. I'm not implying you haven't done this, Emily. You laid your cards on the table for the last 90 minutes, and I'm grateful. But what's it really all about for you?
Connecting with people.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. The first question I ask is, what's the best thing for a human being? And I got that from this woman who studied with Wilhelm Reich, and she says, best thing for a human being is another human being. You know?
Right. Yeah.
And my thing is that I think that's why humans invented things, to share them with other people. Because why do humans have to invent anything? In the long run, they have disservices, and we're trying to deal with these. So I think Clinton is gonna come on and ask you a question, then I'll finish it off with one question. Boy, this has been fun, Emily. I learned a lot, and I definitely. Oh, here he is, Clinton. He actually listens, and we appreciate Clinton. Thank you for being there.
Oh yeah, no. This has been a great. It's wonderful to follow along. It's provocative, actually. I love your use of the word artifice. The way that you said you'd like to try and use and show sort of the medium that you're working on while you're expressing stuff. Is that probably because you're multi-disciplined in these various mediums? Like, do you think you've got more of a perception of what's going on behind appearances in general owing to that? Is that sort of the whole idea of wanting to reveal the artifice of within your work, I'll put it?
I think it's my innate skepticism about things and not wanting to put too much stock in images and themselves as images, or to kind of question the solidity of any of the representations and just prevent them from becoming too monolithic or too reverent. And I think highlighting the artifice allowing us to see the seams perhaps, or reminding us that they are indeed constructed, is a really important exercise. Yeah.
In the 90s, I remember illusionists sort of became a thing compared to magicians, where they do tricks, but they try to be very explicit about not being magicians. Is that kind of where you're going with that?
Yeah, I'm certainly into illusions. Yeah. And yeah, bit of an illusionist myself.
Well, media regardless creates icons, like, say Pee Wee Herman, for instance. So
I love how much he's figured into this.
yeah, is media content a place you can go? Like, how literally could we take that if we were to use that as a metaphor? How much is media content a place you can go?
Yeah, we can see media as a site, I think. Like a nexus where different things meet. Yeah, we could look at media as a place, I think. Conceptually, at least. That works as a metaphor for me.
Yeah, I got that because of the way you broke down music videos into 3 types of information. Is information a substance? Like, is it tangible?
No, I mean, well, I don't know. I think it's an experience. It's like more experiential. So we're talking about different streams of information running parallel to one another. We're talking about a temporal experience, I think.
Well, that's cool. See, just because I'm so interested in media studies themselves, McLuhan's main point is that he's trying to say that people change depend on their media experience, and so then he uses the language like books people are this sort of way and movie people are that sort of way, in the wholeness of just how they express themselves. Do you see that as a thing so much? It's a very extreme, radical, I think he's over exaggerating just to try and provoke the perception, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like if there's a contemporary equivalent. Like, are there book people and movie people anymore?
Like, can you tell if someone spends too much time on a computer, or can you tell if someone's a musician, or can you tell if someone drives a lot? I don't know. I'm pulling these.
Yeah, maybe there's been like a kind of leveling. I'm not sure.
If it's leveling,
you can tell if someone reads a lot by the way they speak. Sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true.
Yeah.
If it's converging, where are we going?
Like down a dark, mysterious tunnel. I don't know.
Cool. No, you're really quick at this, but Gerry, go ahead, take the reins.
Yeah, going into that dark cloud you said. I love
it.
Yeah. The dark cloud.
At this point, we're making stuff up.
Yeah. No, that's what it's all about. See, making and matching. See, I go to these and I don't want them meaning the person I'm interviewing to use their stock lines. That's matching. Making, this is McLuhan made a big distinguishing. Making is just make stuff up. That's what but you are relying on what you know, but you're also just making stuff up. And back to Clinton brilliantly brought up again to the poet T.S. Eliot said they had the experience but missed the meaning. So how much is a kid making, or a younger person making a TikTok now and doing it, and they're missing the meaning. Like I made something like a TikTok with a niece or a nephew a couple years ago before TikTok broke. And I went, this is amazing. This is taping with shifting time for like 30 seconds on some cell phone app. I says, this is experimental film. And I made it with them. And it was like amazing because I found meaning in it. Now, they might not have, but it might have led them to go, oh, I'm going to look at this differently than just being the routine. You know, like the routine for us, we would go to the TV every Saturday morning and watch Pee-wee. That was the routine. But then how was the content changing us? And how much was it just the form of being in that nice, warm, safe place, which is total metaphor. We were all sitting in Cherry. You know, Cherry was this nice, comfortable place to sit in, you know. And you know what?
Eyes.
Yeah. I mean, that's where we all. So just a couple more, and that was really good, Clinton. You brought up some great ideas, and so what's the healthiest cultural shift you see developing today, Emily?
I think accountability. You know,
Yeah.
there's an effort toward that I think is healthy.
Yeah.
Painful as it is, contentious as it is, it's healthy.
Yeah. And then what gives you the most optimism?
Young people.
Yeah.
You know, you talk to somebody who's 20 and often they're just amazing. And I often feel like I wish I was growing up when, you know, as they are. Like, I feel like they're really ahead in a lot of ways and they give me hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is the answer I get the most of. So yeah, let's hear it for the young people. We're all young. We know that. We're young at heart. I love your playfulness too, because you know, that's what I think all artists are trying to be is not like McLuhan said, the Balinese have no word for art. They do everything as well as they can. You know, kids don't make art because they're trying to get their picture on the refrigerator art gallery. They're just making art, you know. So Emily, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and energy.
Yeah, thank you. It was really nice to talk to you and catch up with you again.
Yep.
It was fun to meet you at Film Farm and fun to see you again here.
Yes.
Hope to meet in person someday. Nice to meet you, Clinton. Maybe I'll run into you in Ottawa sometime.
Nice to meet you, Emily. I hope so.
Okay.